On this edition of Southern Newsweek, Dunedin residents aren't happy about brightly coloured dots on the main street. Tourism resumes in the south after 2 months off due to COVID-19, and a southern mayor is fuming about a department store closure. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Melissa Barton. The Dunedin City Council has created a firestorm over the introduction of its temporary plans for George Street. Along with reducing traffic to the equivalent of jogging pace, the painting of brightly coloured dots has alarmed some parents of young children.
Dunedin's main street is now splashed with colourful spots to encourage pedestrians to exercise social distancing by veering out onto the roadway. Caroline Bishop is concerned it looks too much like a playground, which might entice toddlers, such as her daughter, out into oncoming traffic.
I don't think it's achieving its objective, which I understand is that it's to promote social distancing and pedestrian use, I guess, down George Street. My issue with them is that I think they make the road look like a playground.
She says even at slow speeds, a distracted driver could accidentally kill a child who ran out in front of a passing car.
For kids, it just looks playful, doesn't look like a road, and any driver, there's enough things to negotiate with all the hazards to be aware of on a busy street than more people, more dots, little kids.
Most councillors spoken to by the Otago Daily Times agree there has been an overwhelming amount of negative feedback to the changes. In Dunedin, the south today.
Shock closures of some H&J Smith stores sent ripples across the south, particularly in centres, where the department store has been a mainstay for generations. In Balfour, people are set to lose their jobs, but the mayor says the region is ready to rally together.
It's time to circle the wagon. It's time to see that there's a bigger picture than, it's so convenient. Go down and tell H&J's how convenient your online shopping is.
It was a day of mixed emotions in the Clutha district yesterday, as employment fortunes ebbed and flowed. As the town reeled under the news 9 jobs would be lost from the closure of the long-standing H&J Smith department store, supermarket giant Countdown restated its commitment to building a new supermarket, bring with it up to 80 new jobs. Mayor Brian Cadogan described the situation as one step forward and one step back for the district.
So first and foremost, our thoughts are with the staff and their families. It's a time that it's just such an unsettling time, and who wants to find themselves in that position? But I think we've also got to look on the positive side that there was a fragile confidence coming through our district. We've fared far better than most, and sure, we're going to be impacted by the world, and that's been shown with H&J Smith. But comparatively, our district has done exceptionally well.
Cadogan says the economic development agency, Clutha Development, will work to link those people who have lost their jobs through its new Work Local initiative.
Grabbing the person and grabbing the job and putting it together, because it is quite feral. That is what you need to do to get the cogs moving.
He also sent out a warning to residents that unless they started seriously considering where they spent their money, there would be more closures.
Every time that you shop online, don't go and ask to support your sports team or your kids group or your whatever. We're going to circle the wagons. Everyone else is doing it, and if we don't focus for ourselves, let's just get used to sitting in front of a camera and explaining job losses. It's time to circle the wagon. It's time to see that there's a bigger picture than, it's so convenient. Go down and tell H&J's how convenient your online shopping is.
Delayed by COVID-19, Countdown expects to start work on its new supermarket in Balfour by the end of the year. In Balfour, the south today.
As the country slowly eases back to normality, tourist resorts are noticing a positive growth in local visitors. Queenstown is one place proving a popular destination for Kiwis, according to the resort's wind tunnel business.
The iFly tourism venture has surpassed all expectations since the company reopened its doors last Thursday, despite 70% of its usual tourism market having disappeared. iFly's wind tunnel is used to simulate the effects of freefall from a skydive. The company says when the first ATR arrived last week, a person from Auckland came straight off the plane and into the wind tunnel. iFly is pleased to see new customers from around the south, including Invercargill and Dunedin, supporting local. Skydive instructors and hobbyists also use the tunnel to hone their skills or learn new ones. In Queenstown, the South Today.
Fundraising for the South Canterbury Hospice in Ashburton has undergone a change since the COVID-19 lockdown. Instead of door-knocking businesses for donations, one of their fundraisers organised a 73-kilometre cycle trip for the public to sponsor.
Getting ready to cycle 73 kilometres on his 73rd birthday to raise funds for the hospice in Ashburton. Tony Todd was joined on Wednesday by about 25 cycling friends, including several members of the local Lions Club, with about half a dozen of them set to cycle the full 73k.
Today is my 73rd birthday, and I thought on my 73rd birthday I would take inspiration from Captain Tom in England, who walked 100 laps of his rest home to raise funds for the NHS in England. So I thought, well, on my 73rd birthday, why don't I ride 73k's and raise funds for Hospice Mid Canterbury?
Todd says he came up with the idea when his usual ways of fundraising for the hospice were affected by the financial and social impacts of COVID-19.
My role was to go out and raise funds from businesses, which is obviously going to be a bit difficult. So I thought, well, what can I do? So I thought, oh, why don't I jump on my bike and try and raise a few dollars.
His efforts have already seen nearly $7,000 being pledged, with the hope of more donations still to come.
We're so proud of Tony for thinking of this, because with COVID-19, I think a lot of charities are very reluctant to go out and ask for money, because we know people are really suffering and struggling financially. So to do this and to get the amount of support that he's got is just tremendous.
Donations in support of Tony's 73-kilometre ride can still be made to Hospice Mid Canterbury. In Ashburton, the South Today.
After the break on Southern Newsweek, some beautiful critters return to Otago Museum. And the Highlanders are training ahead of the new look Super Rugby competition. So see you after the break. Welcome back. Life is starting to return to normal in the rugby world, with Super Rugby teams restarting team training this week. The Highlanders have 2 weeks to get match fit before their first game against the Chiefs at Forsyth Bar Stadium on June the 13th.
Checking in for the first time in more than 10 weeks, the Highlanders were back on the turf at Forsyth Bar Stadium this week. Training resumed for the Dunedin-based Super Rugby team, though players were still restricted to training bubbles and strict tracing procedures were in place. Head coach Aaron Major says the team is rearing and ready to get back into action when the revised Super Rugby competition starts next month.
First couple of days of obviously a lot of excitement around, so I think the boys have enjoyed being able to spread their wings a little bit more, and the connection was really critical for us coming in. But really proud of the connection through the whole challenge, really, through isolation. That was a big focus of ours, making sure the guys didn't go through the challenge by themselves, although they're in isolation, making sure the connection was really strong and really put on our boys around who they wanted to be when they turned up on day one.
Major says the players' fitness levels were given a thorough run-through after 2 months of isolation. And while they had been doing as much as they could at home, he says there's nothing like the real thing.
Obviously they were tested straight away with Broncos and gym sessions and a good sort of preview of our season so far, and also looking forward. So yeah, on the whole, some good excitement there.
All Black and Highlanders halfback Aaron Smith says it was good to finally be allowed to interact with his teammates. He says he's confident the team will be ready for their first game against the Chiefs in 2 weeks.
Just more, and just great to be around the guys again in an interesting situation, but as you said, way better than being at home and trying to do our training by ourselves. Had a great couple of days so far. Awesome to be out on the stadium training yesterday, indoors.
Super Rugby Aotearoa will kick off in Dunedin on June 13, and the 10-week competition will feature home and away games between all 5 New Zealand teams. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Brightly coloured tropical butterflies are again flocking in the Otago Museum's recently reopened tropical forest. But with the museum's usual source in the Philippines still under lockdown, the brightly winged insects are having to be sourced elsewhere.
Many species of butterfly don't live very long, But several of the ones at the Otago Museum, which came out of their chrysalis before lockdown, were still enjoying the tropical forest 8 weeks later. While the museum was closed to the public during lockdown, staff visited every day, looking after the surviving butterflies as well as several other creatures living there, such as quail and turtles.
So me and science communicator Katrina Gower took turns coming in, and we did what we do every morning, basically, is feeding the animals, making sure they're all healthy and happy.
The museum normally gets butterflies from the Philippines, but with that country still in lockdown, new additions to the tropical forest's butterfly population are being shipped in from Central America.
From Costa Rica, we'll keep getting shipments, but the Philippines is still in lockdown, so we don't know when we'll get them.
About 200 butterflies, some with the wingspan of a small bird, are now flying in the forest, with over 400 more, including blue morphos, set to come out of their chrysalises this week for the public to enjoy.
Yeah, seeing people come in and enjoy it is one of the best parts.
In Dunedin, the South Today.
Hunters across the south breathed a sigh of relief over the decision to begin a delayed 2020 game bird season on May the 23rd, following the country's move into Level 2. Keen hunters were looking forward to the season getting underway.
The decoys are out on the pond, and the finishing touches have been put on the mai-mai, ahead of what some southern hunters say is bigger than Christmas. Across the south, hunters are preparing for a slightly late start to the duck shooting season, which was postponed due to the restrictions during Level 3 and Level 4 lockdown. Southland duck shooter Derek Mason doesn't think the delay will cause any issues come tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so we've tricked the ducks this year, so they think we've forgotten about it. So we've got a wee advantage. So no, just a little bit later. So the duck numbers seem, from what I've seen, and guys I've talked to other ponds, numbers are really, really good. So yeah, being a bit later, I don't think there's a lot of consequence actually.
Mason has been duck shooting since he was a teenager and has been hunting on the same pond at Mairos Beach near Invercargill for the past 10 years. He says being around family and friends is a big part of the appeal for many come opening morning.
The dog, really like seeing her go. But the real bonus is, as I say, we have my mum, my dad, my brother comes, so my nephew comes, my boys come, so you get 3 generations, and that's, you get to sit around and there's no time pressures, you talk about all sorts.
Met Service is forecasting a mixed bag of weather for opening weekend, with light rain and low cloud expected across most of Otago and Southland. But Mason thinks that will suit those in their mai-mai tomorrow morning, with many hoping the fine weather doesn't continue.
So if it's beautiful weather like this, then there might be a bit of a battle, but as it is every year. But yeah, if we get some nice bad weather, it should be a good season.
As part of their obligations under Level 2, shooters will need to record contact details of everyone they hunt with for contact tracing and maintain social distancing from people they don't know. In Southland, the South Today.
COVID-19 restrictions mean live music venues are restricted in audience numbers. But the Dog with Two Tails Cafe has got around the issue by using the internet to stream their first gig since lockdown.
Live music on the internet. These Dunedin artists performed for the first time since lockdown last Friday at Dog with Two Tails Cafe, in front of an audience of mainly camera operators and sound and internet technicians.
So the live streaming is because this has never really been a business to make money. This has always been something of a community project in order to provide a facility for musicians to come and play and for them to connect with the good people of Dunedin.
I was born under bad signs.
Some of the musicians chose to perform elsewhere and send their videos in. Dog with Two Tails owner Michael Wilson says it's good to have the bar and cafe back open.
I think the government's done a really good job at giving us a certain level of certainty, as much as they possibly can. Going into Level 2 is heartening because at least we can open the cafe up again with the commensurate restrictions with Level 2. It'll take a bit longer for Bark to open properly. We don't yet know when that'll be able to open properly.
Wilson says the closure of his business during lockdown gave him some sleepless nights, but he's not as bad off as some.
So even though we were shut and had no income, we had a lot of bills to pay. And those small suppliers especially have found this time very hard. I got notice yesterday of one supplier that that won't be able to supply anymore. So there are people going out of business because of this, which is a great pity.
Last week's concert can still be viewed on YouTube and the cafe's Facebook site. In Dunedin, the South today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, a Timaru artist finds a great use for broken glass, and a group of Southern women enjoy a girls-only mai-mai. So catch you after the break. Welcome back. Several tourists are visiting Dunedin's freedom camping sites as they restart their journeys across New Zealand. Like everyone else, they've had to stay put for a month until COVID-19 restrictions eased.
Lisa Galuso and her travelling companion are freedom camping at Dunedin's Ocean View Recreation Reserve, having resumed their New Zealand road trip after being locked down in Hokitika, where they ended up renting an apartment for 7 weeks.
Well, it wasn't too bad because anyway we were nice and close to the beach, so we could actually go for a walk over there, and yeah, there were a few trucks as well, so we weren't really stuck in an apartment. But yeah.
The pair say they never had any doubts about remaining in New Zealand during lockdown, and were glad to be somewhere safer than their home country of Italy.
We couldn't leave actually because in Italy the situation was much worse than here, so we couldn't go back to Italy or back home anyway, so we only had this option, but I think it was the best one because we were safer here than back home. So.
They're planning on spending the next few months in an apartment in Queenstown before hopefully jetting back to Italy in August.
Yeah, we keep going for a little while with the van, and then we have rented an apartment in Queenstown for the winter time.
In Dunedin, the South today.
For the last 7 years, a group of young women in Southland have been getting together at the start of every duck shooting season. While their mai-mai, which is restricted to ladies only, bags a good number of ducks every year, they say it's more about the camaraderie and taking care of each other.
The Hen House is a girls-only mai-mai in Balfour, where this group of young Southland women have been getting together each duck hunting season for the last 7 years.
We sort of grew up with duck shooting around us, and then we decided that we wanted to get together as a group of girls and give the boys a run for their money. Probably.
Only about half the ladies attending the Hen House mai-mai have firearms licences, but there's plenty of other things to do than just shooting.
Well, there's probably half of us shoot and the other half is sort of a support crew, and then eventually...
Bacon butty makers.
Nationally, less than 10% of duck shooting licences are issued to women, but Jess Turnbull says there's no reason why women can't go duck hunting.
It's just fun for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are.
Doesn't matter who you are.
What sex you are, it's just a good time. Yep.
The girls-only mai-mai was built with the help and encouragement of local menfolk, including Jamie Edwards' late husband, Liam Edwards, who died 4 years ago in a helicopter crash near Athol.
I started duck shooting with him, before I came to this mai-mai, and that's where most of the encouragement sort of came from. When I shot a duck, he'd be like, "Yeah, Cheryl, get into it."
And he had his digger in here cleaning out the pond for us, and we competed with them.
Yes.
And we did compete with them.
Yes,
and
we did.
Beat them.
And we easily beat them most years every year.
So they were our competition.
And while the girls regularly beat the neighbouring boys with a number of ducks bagged, it's more about the camaraderie and taking care of each other.
We scrub up the mai-mai and put in a bit of effort, and then try and keep everyone quiet for the first couple of hours. It's probably the hardest bit.
This year's duck shooting season across the whole South Island is set to run until 26th July. In Southland, the South today.
Redundancies and restructuring are now a reality for many businesses in Te Anau. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, tourist ventures were feeling the pinch after flooding in February closed the Milford Road for several weeks.
Even though Te Anau, seen here in file footage from last summer, has never been bustling with tourists such as neighbouring Queenstown or Wanaka, Local business managers say the town is still likely to be seriously affected by COVID-19.
It's fair to say that tourism sustains Te Anau, Manapōuri, Milford Sound in terms of jobs. We will become more like a little rural town.
Te Anau's tourism has been hit twice this year. First when floods closed a major tourist road to Milford Sound for several weeks in February, and more recently COVID-19. Destination Fiordland manager Madeline Peacock is concerned how some tourist ventures will cope.
Some smaller businesses are probably finding it a little bit easier to be nimble and to downsize without having to go through full restructure processes. But yeah, we are seeing big players really having to very, very seriously consider how they continue to be viable.
Fiordland Jet co-owner Chris Adams restarted boat trips a week ago, and he's hoping to attract business junkets from across the country.
No one actually owes us a living. It's up to us to try and see what we can do to keep going. The wage subsidies are a huge help to keep the staff on. So we need to get out there and say Te Anau's open for business, the accommodation is going to be cheap. The big thing we're going to try and aim for is work dues in corporate functions. You know, if you're going to have your work do or incentive groups out of Auckland or Wellington or that have often gone overseas, come down to Te Anau, spend a few days here down to Milford, come on a jet boat with us.
The government's planning to spend nearly $14 million on repairing conservation and visitor infrastructure destroyed by February's floods in Fiordland, with the Routeburn and Milford track set to be open in time for summer. In Te Anau, the South Today.
A Timaru-based artist is using recycled glass to create her artworks. The glass is smashed into small pieces and reshaped in beautiful creations that echo the sometimes sentimental origins of the glass.
Broken glass gets a new lease on life in Tracy Winter's art studio in Timaru, where it is recycled with often a strong sentimental message.
This here was brought and I've made it into one of these little hearts, and that was his wife's. Before she passed away, it was one of her favourite vases and it got broken, so yeah.
Winter moved down to Timaru from Christchurch after the earthquakes and often tries to source glass from heritage buildings which are due to be demolished.
I like using recycled glass. I pick it up where I can. I've been managed to be fortunate enough to be given some from the ANZ Bank in Christchurch, which is really cool. It was pre-earthquake stuff. I do like to reuse things, like upcycle.
While she narrowly missed out on getting glass from Timaru's Seven Oaks Reception Centre before it was knocked down last week, there's plenty of other sources for her to create her artworks, which are now being sold in several galleries across the country.
There's a little place down in Waitati on the way to Dunedin. There's a cafe come gallery there, and I went down there and she took some of my bigger bowls, and yeah, people love them. And then I went to, I've got them also at Little River, and then the end of last year I went up and saw my daughter in Auckland in Parnell Gallery. I walked in there with them and yeah, they've got them, and I'm on their list. Wow. It was a bit of a wow moment, that one.
And having had time to re-evaluate her art during the COVID-19 lockdown, Tracy Winter is now committed to making this her livelihood. In Timaru, the South Today.
That wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. Have a great evening. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.